What if one radio conversation cost you $50,000 and your championship hopes in a single afternoon? What if the words you spoke in anger, words you thought were private, words meant only for your crew, became the very evidence that NASCAR used to destroy your season? That is exactly what happened to Ryan Preece at Texas Motor Speedway, and the story behind this penalty is far more twisted, far more dramatic, and far more controversial than any headline can possibly capture. It was May 3rd, 2026 at Texas Motor Speedway, and the NASCAR Cup Series was running the Worth 400. The sun was blazing over Fort Worth, the engines were screaming at full throttle, and somewhere deep in the middle of that race, a feud that had been simmering for weeks was finally about to explode. Ryan Preece, driving the number 60 RFK Racing Ford, was having a frustrating day, and the source of that frustration had a name: Ty Gibbs, the young and controversial driver of the number 54 Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota. During an early caution period in the race, Ryan Preece got on his team radio, and what came out of his mouth was not the kind of thing you want NASCAR officials to hear. He said, and these are his own words, "What an idiot that kid is. He is so lucky his car is so fast. All right, when I get to that 54, I'm done with him." Now understand what that means in the world of NASCAR. That is not just frustration talking. That is a driver, on a recorded team radio frequency, making a declaration of intent. That is a man telling his crew, in plain and unmistakable language, that he is going to make something happen when he catches that car. And NASCAR was listening. Then came lap 101. Entering turn 3, Preece approached the back of Gibbs' Toyota and contact was made. What happened next was violent and fast. Gibbs's car snapped sideways, went sliding across the racing surface, and slammed hard into the safer barrier on the outside of the corner. It was a brutal hit. Gibbs's day was over right there, and he was classified in 36th place, the worst possible result after being completely removed from competition. Meanwhile, Preece kept going, and in one of the most remarkable moments of this whole story, he radioed back to his team and said he never touched the 54 car. He claimed there was no contact, but the data told a completely different story. After the race, Ryan Preece appeared on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio's late shift program, and rather than staying quiet or denying everything, he opened up in a way that few drivers ever do. He said, "There are people that you know you can race with respect around and cut brakes to. He was very close to clear getting into turn 3 and I could lift, but I didn't." He also told reporters, "Decisions you make on the racetrack, there are repercussions. I try to race everybody with an amount of respect that I'd like in return. When you don't do that, I'm not going to cut you a break." That's what happened. In those few sentences, Ryan Preece had essentially admitted to NASCAR, to the media, and to the entire world that he made a conscious choice not to avoid contact with Ty Gibbs. While Preece was speaking publicly, NASCAR was working quietly behind the scenes, conducting the kind of detailed investigation that most fans never see. According to NASCAR Vice President of Race Communications Mike Ford, who spoke openly about the process on the Hauler Talk podcast, the organization reviewed 3 separate categories of evidence before making any decision. First, they reviewed all available video footage of the incident from multiple camera angles. Second, they reviewed the in-car audio recordings, which included those damning radio transmissions where Preece had explicitly stated his intention. Third, and perhaps most critically, they pulled the SMT data, the sports metrics telemetry data, which captures precise information about steering inputs, throttle position, brake application, and vehicle movement in real time. 2 days after the race, on Tuesday, May 5th, 2026, NASCAR released its weekly penalty report, and Ryan Preece's name was at the very top. He was fined $50,000 and docked 25 driver points under sections 4.3 and 4.4a of the NASCAR rulebook, the sections that deal directly with member conduct and specifically list wrecking or spinning another vehicle as a punishable offense. The 25-point deduction dropped Preece 1 position in the championship standings from 12th all the way down to 13th, and his buffer above the provisional chase cut line shrunk from 63 points all the way down to 38 points. In a playoff system where every single point matters, that is not just a fine. That is a potential death sentence for his championship ambitions. Meanwhile, Ty Gibbs was watching all of this unfold from the other side, and his response was brief, sharp, and perfectly calculated. When Preece's radio call went viral on social media, and it went viral almost immediately after the race, Gibbs reposted the clip and wrote simply, "At least he is honest." 4 words. No anger, no drama, no extended commentary. Just 4 words that made Preece look even worse by letting the situation speak entirely for itself. The internet, as you might expect, lost its mind. Fans were split right down the middle, with some celebrating Preece for racing with old-school grit and accountability, and others calling for even heavier punishments. But here is where the story takes a turn that truly ignited the NASCAR community, because while Ryan Preece was being handed the largest penalty of the week, another driver was walking away from a very similar situation with absolutely nothing. Late in that same Texas race, Kyle Busch made contact with John Hunter Nemechek coming off Turn 2, and when the 2 cars entered Turn 3, Busch drove deep to the inside and hit Nemechek hard, sending him spinning into the outside wall. To anyone watching with their own eyes, it looked almost identical to what Preece had done to Gibbs. The question started immediately. Why did Preece get fined and penalized, while Kyle Busch faced 0 consequences? NASCAR's Mike Ford went on the Holler Talk podcast to address this controversy directly, and his explanation rested on 3 key differences between the 2 incidents. First, he said, there was no radio transmission from Kyle Busch that explicitly declared an intention to wreck John Hunter Nemechek. In Preece's case, the audio was clear and documented. Busch had no such recording. Second, the SMT telemetry data for Kyle Busch's car showed something critical. After the incident, Busch was turning his steering wheel all the way to the left just to go straight, which strongly suggested that his car had already sustained significant damage from earlier contact. In other words, the data raised at least a plausible case that what happened with Nemechek might have been the result of a mechanically compromised vehicle rather than deliberate intent. Third, Ford acknowledged that this was now the 2nd time in 4 weeks that Kyle Busch had been involved in a post-race controversy about whether or not he should have been penalized, the first being an incident with Riley Herbst at Bristol Motor Speedway. He made it clear that NASCAR leadership would be meeting with Busch and Richard Childress Racing to discuss the pattern of behavior. This entire situation raises questions that go far beyond Ryan Preece and Ty Gibbs. It raises questions about how NASCAR enforces its own rules, about whether the evidence threshold for intentional contact is being applied consistently, and about whether drivers in different cars with different team relationships are being held to different standards. The NASCAR rulebook says wrecking another vehicle is punishable regardless of whether that vehicle is actually removed from competition. But the decision to penalize is clearly not as simple as whether contact was made. Intent matters. Evidence matters. And in 2026, in an era of high-definition cameras, real-time telemetry, and always recording team radios, a driver's own words can be turned into the most powerful piece of evidence against him. Ryan Preece is a racer who grew up in the old-school tradition where respect on the track was earned through how you raced other people and where there were real consequences when that respect was not returned. He made his decision on lap 101, he said so openly, and now he is paying the price with $50,000 out of his pocket and 25 points stripped from his championship. Whether you think the penalty was fair or excessive, whether you think Kyle Busch should have faced the same consequences, one thing is absolutely certain. At Texas Motor Speedway in May 2026, Ryan Preece picked up a microphone and told the entire world exactly what he was going to do, and then he went out and did it. And in NASCAR, in a sport built on aggression, speed, and occasionally controlled chaos, those are the moments that define careers, ignite debates, and keep millions of fans coming back every single week to see what happens next.